Good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to be back here at Congregation B'Shalom. Shalom. Before we begin our regular learning schedule, I want to share a short thought on this past week's Parsha. We see something very, very interesting that, Moshe is the leader of the Jewish people, and we know that after the Jewish people decimate the Midianites by the instruction of God and Moses, then they take over all of the spoils, they take over all of their pots and pans, and the Jewish people want to know what to do with these pots and pans. How do we kosher them? This idea of koshering is not a new idea. This is one that goes back to the Torah, and that when we have a pot that is previously owned by a non-Jew, before it goes into the hands of a Jew, there needs to be a koshering process. When we buy new dishes and new pots and pans, we dip them in the mikveh, and we can get into that another time. But here we see that when the Jewish people ask what to do, Moshe remains silent, and instead his student Elazar HaKohen, he's the one who answers. And it's very interesting. Elazar HaKohen, the verse tells us, answers what Moses heard from the Almighty. I mean, Moses is sitting right there. Moses can answer himself. Why didn't Moses answer? So we've discussed numerous times in this class and in other classes the pitfalls of anger. And our sages explained to us that Moses expressed anger here. He expressed anger because the Midianite women were saved by the Jewish army, and they weren't also killed. And Moses was upset that they just killed the men. And he told them, go back and kill the women. And so they did, because they also brought about the Jewish people to come to sin. So Moses felt, rightfully, by Hashem's command, that it's not enough for only the men to be killed. Also, the women who made the Jewish people sin should also deserve to be killed. The women who weren't old enough, they should be kept alive. And so his expression, he was very, very angry. And when you're angry, our sages tell us, when you're angry, you forget your wisdom. When you're angry, you forget your wisdom. And it says, we know that when the Jewish people were mourning the death of Moses, 30 different laws were forgotten from the world that only Moses was able to know. It says later on, one of the great prophets was able to bring them back and restore those 30 laws. But 30 laws were totally forgotten. So we see that here Moses forgot or wasn't able to speak anymore about this specific law because he had just experienced anger. When you have anger, you forget your wisdom. It's one of the byproducts of anger. Now, think of Moses. We're not here to reprimand Moshe. Moshe is our leader, right? He's far greater than any of us will probably ever be, and a far greater prophet than any prophet was or will be. And here we see that he was angry. What type of anger did he have? Was he angry because someone took his parking spot? Was he angry for something of his own? No. It wasn't for his own accord. It wasn't for his own honor. This was for the honor of the Almighty. This was for the Jewish people. He was angry for a holy cause. Even then, there's an expense to pay. There is a price to pay for one being angry. Imagine for ourselves, if we're angry and it's for a personal matter, how much more impact it has and how devastating the results can be for us not properly containing that anger. When we aren't able to contain that anger, and we talk about this a lot in our Musar classes on Musar Mondays, we talk about anger, and we talk about patience, learning to overcome anger and staying more calm and patient with circumstances that are out of our control or are in our control, and we can choose not to be irritated by it. So Hashem should bless us all that we shouldn't experience anger. And if we do experience anger, it should only be for holy causes, not for our personal matters. So that way, at least, If we do forget, it's for a good reason that we forget our wisdom, but certainly not for our own personal animus or anger towards any situation that happens around us. With that, my friends, we're going to sign off online, and you're welcome to join us here at Congregation B'Shalom every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, either with Rabbi Cohn or with yours truly. Have a terrific week, everyone.